If someone asks to put makeup on you, don't do what she did. One night, a girl in Japan was walking home at night when she came across an elderly woman. It seemed like the woman was walking around aimlessly. She was wearing an oversized hat and had a cane. While she had wrinkles on her face, she also wore quite a bit of makeup. The young girl didn't think much of it until the old woman came up to her and asked if she wanted to try some of her makeup powder. She said that she loved using it and it would make the young girl so much more beautiful. She didn't want to be rude, so she agreed. What could be the harm? But she could have never imagined the horrifying consequences this could possibly lead to. The moment the white powder was applied to her face, she felt a deep burning sensation. Then she felt the flesh on her face fall off. The old woman was the face powder hag, a creature from Japanese urban legend who tricks young girls into putting on her makeup. When the young girls' faces begin to rot and fall off until there's nothing left but a skull, she will steal their flesh for herself. What she does with it is still a mystery. Do you know someone who wants to be around you all the time? For one newly married couple, this quickly turned into something more terrifying. So this couple got married and moved into their new house together. Soon the husband noticed that his wife became more attached to him than usual, as in she wouldn't be able to spend one moment away from him. She said, "When you're not at home, I still feel you near me. I hear you calling my name." He just thought that she was being sweet, but the truth is not so simple. One day after he got back from work, his wife said, "I think there's something wrong with me. You walked from the kitchen to the bedroom and was staring out the window all day." But the husband knew that he was at work all day. Over the next few days, she started acting even weirder, until one night she was next to her husband and said, "You're not here. You're there. You're in the kitchen." Then they both heard a noise. The husband walked into the kitchen to investigate, and he saw himself standing there with a blank, lifeless expression on his face. This man, or whoever it was, walked out of the kitchen and disappeared into the hallway. And as the husband went back into his bedroom to get his wife, he heard someone's voice coming from behind him. It was his wife's voice, only it wasn't, and it whispered into his ear, "We are here to stay forever." This is why you should never knock on a stranger's door. Once there was a man trying to check into a hotel. The woman at the front desk gave him his key and told him none of the guests are allowed to go into the room across the hall. He agreed, but as he continued to stay in the hotel, he grew more and more curious about the room he wasn't supposed to go in. At one point, he even walked down the hall to that room and tried the door. It was locked. Then he bent down and looked through the keyhole. He saw that it was just the same as his hotel room. But in the corner of the room, there was a woman whose skin was extremely pale, almost a sickly white. Her back was to the wall, so the man didn't see what she looked like. He almost knocked on the door, but then just decided to leave her alone. The next day, he walked past the door again and decided to look into the keyhole. This time, there was no hotel room and no woman. It was all just red. He thought that this seemed really strange, so he went to the front desk and asked about the room. After insisting on an answer, the woman at the front desk told him, "A long time ago, a man killed his wife in that room, and her ghost is still there. But these ghosts are not what you might imagine. They're completely white all over, except for their eyes, which are red."
So my house is super fucking paranormal, and this is the first incident I had. So in 6th grade, I had 3 friends over and we were playing hide and go seek. So I hid in the pantry and there's no way anybody could hear me. There's no vents and I wasn't even talking. So I'm sitting there like, cause like I wanted to win the fuck. So I'm sitting in there and 10 minutes pass and I hear my friends talking downstairs. So I go down there and I'm like, "Did y'all give up?" And they look at me, they're like, "We thought you were in the crawl space." I was like, "No." They were like, "No, we were literally talking to somebody in the crawl space." And they said like it was this little girl like asking for help and shit. So I get freaked out and I'm like looking around, I'm like, "What the fuck?" And around 2 minutes later, the doorknob to the crawl space starts going like this, like shaking and shit. So I literally had a heart attack and I was like, "Okay, we're leaving." So we grabbed all of our shit, we grabbed my dog and we went in front of the house. I called my dad crying. I was like, "There's something in this fucking house." And he was like, "No, the fuck there's not." So he gets home, he checks the house, he's like, y'all are stupid, like there's no shit here. But we all heard it and we all saw the doorknob shake. And it only got worse from then.
This is why you shouldn't believe what you see on TV. A photographer was trying to think of new places to take photos of when he remembered something from his childhood. He used to watch a TV show that taught kids morals with every episode, but the way they taught them were often through scary images, cautionary tales, and warnings. The closing scene every time, though, was of an old rusted closed door. As the camera panned closer to the door, you could hear screams coming from inside. Then text would pop up saying that's where bad kids go. Of course, no one thought much of it, as fake sounds for TV shows were often used back then. The photographer decided to search up that place to see if he could find it. After a while, he finally found out where the TV show was filmed at, went there, and found it abandoned after being burned from the inside out. The photographer entered with his camera, as he found that same door, but after he went inside, he was shocked. He found traces of bone fragments, blood, and other human remains across the floor. But the most terrifying part was the bolted, caged microphone hanging from the roof in the middle of the room. This is why you should never ask too many questions. Once there was an old lady who was widowed and wheelchair bound, living in a house with 2 floors with her caretaker. One day, the police received a call from this old lady's house. The caretaker had been murdered. One detective was sent to investigate, where he found the caretaker's body on the 1st floor, vocal cords ripped out, lying in a pool of blood. The old lady was ruled out as a suspect because she was immobile, but the detective did note that this crime seemed familiar to how the widowed husband died years ago. He had suffocated in his sleep on the couch downstairs when the old lady was upstairs. After getting evidence from the 1st floor crime scene, the detective asked to look upstairs as well. The old lady refused at first, but he insisted and went up anyways. Everything seemed pretty normal until a shocking revelation came over him, and it sent chills down his spine. It was a detail that investigators had overlooked in the murder of the widow's husband as well. There is no phone on the 2nd floor. The detective then suddenly heard a noise, withdrew his weapon, and ran out of the room, only to find an empty wheelchair. This is why you should never watch TV late at night. Once a mother and a father decided they needed a break, so they planned a night out together, and they left their 2 children with their babysitter at home. Everything was going good, the children were well behaved, and the babysitter was just sitting around while watching the kids, but eventually she decided that she wanted to watch some TV. It turns out she couldn't watch it downstairs because they didn't have cable downstairs, so she called the parents and asked if she could watch TV with the kids in their room upstairs. The parents agreed. They were about to hang up the phone when the babysitter had one final request. As she entered the parents' bedroom, she asked if she could cover up their large clown statue with a cloth or a blanket. She said it was making her very uncomfortable. The phone line went dead for a second. Then the mother said over the phone, "Take the children and get out of the house. We don't have a clown statue." As the babysitter turned around, she saw the corners of the clown's mouth widen into a smile. If you ever see a red car, don't do what he did. Once there was a man in Mexico who took a night shift at work. After work, as he was walking home, he saw a bright red car. The red car pulled up in front of him and 3 women were inside. They asked if he needed a ride home, and because he thought they were beautiful and harmless young women, he agreed. The next morning, his wife realized he never came back home. She called his work and they didn't know where he was either, so she called the police. The police then went to his workplace, which is where he was last seen, and began searching. A few miles away, they found his body. It was lying on the side of the road with strange symbols carved all over. The 3 women in the red car turned out to be witches who traveled the road looking for men, usually those who wander the streets late at night. When they found these men, they would entice them to get into their car with them, promise him they could fulfill all of his dreams, then begin their dark occult ritual where he would be sacrificed to the devil. But the most disturbing part of the story is that the bright red car that these witches were driving were painted from the blood of all of their victims. This is why I always lock my doors at night. There was once a boy who got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. While in the bathroom, he hears a loud noise and wanted to go investigate. But then he started hearing what sounded like large objects being dragged across the hallway. Now feeling scared, he runs into the bedroom and hides under his sheets, hoping whoever it was would just ignore a sleeping child. The door creaks open, and a man with no eyes and no clothing is dragging his parents' bloodied bodies into the room. This man props up the boy's father against the edge of the bed so he would be facing the boy, and puts the mother in a chair also turned towards the boy. It was as if the intruder wanted the boy to see the parents' bodies, but the boy just pretended he was asleep, trying as hardest as possible not to make a noise. Then this man started writing something on the walls, and when he was done, he went under the boy's bed and stayed there for hours, until the boy found the courage to turn his head and read the message on the wall. It said, "I know you're awake." Has anyone ever tried to talk to you in a public bathroom? Once a young girl went into a public bathroom and heard from the stall next to hers, "Shall we put on the red vest?" She got scared, ran off, and called the police. 2 officers arrived. One went in and heard the same voice asking, "Shall we put on the red vest?" The officer outside heard her reply, "Okay, put it on." Suddenly, a loud scream, then a thump. The second officer opened the door to check on his partner, then found her head rolling on the ground and blood all the way down her back, making it look like she was wearing a red vest. In Japanese urban legend, the Akamanto is a ghost who haunts bathrooms, specifically female bathrooms. He wears a red cape and hides his face with a white mask. If he chooses you, he will ask you if you want to wear a red vest or a blue vest. If you say red, he will chop your head off. If you say blue, he will grab you by the neck until your face turns blue and you suffocate. If you try to ask for a third color, the floor will open up and a pair of pale hands will reach up and drag you to hell.